Thank you for joining us. In dealing with climate change, how do you actually deal with the unwillingness and disinterest of many governments in taking this issue seriously?
Yeah, thanks for this, for highlighting this point. This is critical. You know, one key part of our work is really building this awareness. And, you know, the government, they know very well the reality of their country. And so their points, their agenda, their priority are critical, but they are also linked to really, they are often, you know, oftenly the result of major issues. And these priorities are most of the time the result of these climate change issues that we are dealing. So we are really raising awareness. We are demonstrating the connection that their priority, their agenda have with these international and major issues that climate change represents. And so that's why on this very climate change issue, UNOPS has first a critical experience. This is already, you know, in place in many countries. And we have really people with the right competencies able to conduct key projects in supporting the governments, the local community to get access to renewable energy, for example. One case in Yemen with all the solar panels, and this is built with all the different partners I mentioned. And this is creating also, it's about conjugating really new green energy and livelihood, because these two needs to be one. And that's why this raised my other point. It's that working in climate change is not just adopting environmental approach. We are coming with this social, no one behind added value, looking and focusing on the most vulnerable, but we need to link this green approach to really economic impact, and really with key livelihoods that can matter, that can change the life of the poorest, and this is critical. So for that, we need to adopt an holistic approach. And the last point is also about, you know, UNOPS cannot do work alone. There is no sense for that. We need to work in partnership, because we do believe by being all together is national, local governments, it's local community, civil society organization, it's the private sector. It's by agreeing, by defining these priorities, by really conjugating the, you know, all the main forces of these different factors, that we can make some change that sustain and really change the life of the people. For example,
you said, can I just interrupt you? I mean, you say, you know, you're working for the people. You said, you know, the vulnerable are the key parts of this. But in many parts of the world, with energy prices soaring right now, there are many people in the, you know, less developed countries who really all they want is affordable energy today, not renewable energy tomorrow. So how do you balance that out?
But, you know, this is right for all the projects. We need to consider the time, and the time of a project and the time of the implementation is not always the political time, and is not also the time where people want to see their life changing. So we need to consider that from the very beginning of a project. We need to be able to have first quick wins, quick impact products. And we need to have a project with more this mid-term results. And then we need also to have this more sustainability focus to really impact the most sustainable work. And here it's about more policy, for example, really to make sure that all this work can sustain. But we need to consider, and we need to answer to the needs of the people now. For example, when we are working in the slums, and so it's, if we want to impact the change in terms of burning, you know, the haven.
If you could be very brief, we're about to run out of time.
Okay, so, we need to make this change possible, accessible now. So we might adopt different strategy. What can be done now for the people? And this needs to happen with the people. It's not just for the people, and the solution can be found locally, and how this can be sustainable, how we can develop urban renewable solutions that sustain and change the life of the people in a sustainable way.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today. In Yemen right now, UNOPS is polluting the planet in some of your projects. How can you justify a green agenda when you are actually polluting the planet?
Thank you, Jim. It's a very relevant question, but I believe this question needs to be in line with the context where we are working. Yemen is facing the worst humanitarian crisis now. And this crisis has brought a lot of disasters for the people who are living in Yemen. So we have a strategy, we have a sustainable solution in place, but addressing the immediate needs of the people always stay at the first agenda. For example, in the hospitals, the patients are coming and they need an immediate intervention. They need surgical operations. And there is an immediate need for the women to deliver babies. There is a need to store the medicine for longer shelf life. We are providing the immediate solution, and we are supposed to provide the immediate solution based on our agile approach. That's a need in town, whereby we are bringing the conventional power system for the time being, and that power system is coming through a fossil fuel-based generators. We understand their impact, but at the same time, in parallel, we have been working on strategic solutions in a more sustainable manner. Solar system driven solutions are in our design phase. We are doing the procurement, and then they will take some time for the logistics to come into the country. So there is a very clear exit strategy for here, moving on from these immediate needs towards a more reliable, more cleaner, and more affordable solutions. So we need to play a balance, and that balance requires us to address the immediate needs now, and then we go on to a more sustainable solutions.
But the problem is surely
just to give you an
example. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just to give you an example here, where I'm sitting right now in Sana'a, there's a referral hospital, a huge hospital, which is taking care of the needs of approximately 500,000 people in a month, and that people are rushing towards due to its referral system. That hospital was facing a shortage of power because there's no power on the on-grid. And we were tasked to take care of the power solutions for this particular hospital. Now, see, this is very important to provide the immediate solution through providing generators for this hospital that we did. But later on, we brought the sustainable energy in this hospital, and now this hospital is back into a more like a sustainable solution than having a solar system in place.
Great. That sounds all good, but surely isn't there a big problem as well in Yemen? There's no regulatory framework for any of this. Who's to say that all those sustainable systems that you're putting on hospitals and other places, they'll be maintained, they'll be kept, they'll not be moved to ministers' houses. Surely you should be getting involved in some serious root and branch reform of regulations, etc. in Yemen. Otherwise, you're just throwing money away.
Indeed, I think that's the fine line which we need to draw. We need to do a humanitarian assistance, whereas we are in parallel working on a reforms on a regulatory framework. So the humanitarian assistance plays its importance. They remain critical and very vital for our interventions. And that's why we are focusing more in the start, whereby in the longer term, we are also working with the related health officials and other regulation authorities here in Yemen to put together a more kind of a structured reforms and regulations in place. And you are absolutely correct that in order to ensure their maintenance of these systems at a later stage, running on a sustainable manner, there got to be a revenue generation system in place. There got to be a public-private partnership in place. There got to be other means which can give a more longer life for these interventions. However, that will take some time. So we cannot waste our time putting together all the reforms before we really address the immediate and emergency needs of the people.
Great. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much to the show. Looking at many of your projects, working with some governments that you work with, governments that will take your money and then run with it. How do you ensure that your projects have extended life? What happens actually when you leave?
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, the sustainability of the projects that we implement is key to the success of the results. Certain activities or certain ways that we approach it is in the project design to work with the beneficiary, to make sure that they're engaged at every stage, to consider the environmental considerations, the materials we use, the use of local technologies, the use of equipment that can be replaced easily in the local marketplace, and then also giving maximum opportunity to local contractors to be engaged in the project. Therefore, bringing the beneficiary along, engaging the local community, and then when we get to the handover stage, instead of handing the keys and walking away, we work with the government, we partner with them for a further year, and they benefit from elements such as consumables, maintenance support, and this can extend up to 3 to 5 years at a very low cost to the project. Therefore, it helps the government to plan their engagement thereafter. So it gives the opportunity for the project to be more sustainable, a much better chance.
You talked about low cost and you talk about beneficiaries. Right now, with the energy crisis, there are many people across the world, and I'm sure in Kosovo, that are seeing their energy prices surge. Isn't there a case of, people are asking for affordable energy now, not renewable energy in the future? How do you make that balance happen?
I think making that balance happen is key to the project design that we engage in. It's to understand what is the challenge to start with, and how can our project, when we implement it with the government, bring in those questions around about the climate change agenda, which is at the heart of everything that we do in our project designs. And for example, when we develop roads, when we design roads, people can then have access to the lighting that comes off the roads to help them, to have some social events or to read in the evening. This therefore reduces their reliance on energy sources that they maybe have to pay for that are high cost. So, there are always other spin-offs that come from the projects we do if we design them properly. And designing them with people at the heart of them, improving the lives of the beneficiaries. These are all of the things that are central to the way we work.
Brendan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. Why is the UN imposing renewable solutions on undeveloped countries when they're the ones least likely to be contributing to CO2 emissions?
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your question. Actually, I think it's really a very good question. I would not say that we are imposing the renewable solutions, but we are not imposing a green agenda for the African and then developing countries. We are supporting and getting you on reaching your green objectives by 2030. And why we are doing that? Because this is our agenda, and we have learned with our experience. We have learned with our experience in other continents, and we see what are the consequences of these experiences. We see what is happening in terms of climate change. So we are not really imposing you. We are here to work with you and to achieve our 2030 green agenda.
That's all good and well, but in some of the undeveloped countries, especially now when energy prices are soaring, a lot of people they can't afford their basic energy needs, and they are crying out for affordable energy today and not renewable energy tomorrow. So how are you addressing that?
It is, again, a very good question. So we cannot choose, between affordable energy today or renewable energy tomorrow. We have to address and to move on this direction, and we have to achieve both goals at the same time, and moving on this direction at the same time. We will continue working and ensuring that we will make our 2030 green agenda. And this is not negotiable, and we are here to support you. At the same time, we will be working in what is really making this current energy, the price of energy is so high. And do you know that 60% of the energy that is produced is lost through the distribution lines? So we will be working, UNOPS will be assisting you and your government in really ensuring and implementing, sustainable infrastructure to ensure that this 60%, for example, is lost. It will not be anymore in the future. So we will not choose between one or other. We will work together on both of them together at the same time.
Thank you very much for your time. Let's give it a go. Hello, thanks for joining us. UNOPS is mostly known for infrastructure, not clean energy. Surely other UN agencies should be dealing with that and not you.
Thanks, Jim. Well, actually, climate action is at the heart of everything that UNOPS does. It is true also that we're global leaders in infrastructure, but it's not any old infrastructure. It's sustainable, resilient, and inclusive infrastructure. And let me give an example of what I mean by that. Currently in Pakistan, we have a project where we're building accommodation specifically for women in police training colleges so that more women can join the police force and improve the gender numbers in the Pakistan police forces throughout the country. Now, the way that we've designed these buildings is really quite innovative and interesting. We have thick cavities in the walls, which prevents the heat from leaving the building in the winter months and prevents the heat from the sun entering in the summer months. We've strategically positioned windows, we've recessed them slightly so that the glare of the sun never hits them directly. We have open air walkways in the upper parts of the building, which encourages a natural air circulation throughout the building, keeping again the building cool. And we've also used special paint on the outside of the building, which then refracts the heat from the sun. And we have light flooring and light walls inside the building, which reduces the need to switch the lights on during the day. All of these things together make the building incredibly energy efficient, thereby reducing the electricity bill for the police training colleges. But also it's good news for the planet, because the energy that is needed to keep these buildings cool and warm throughout the different seasons, they're really quite minimal.
What about wider infrastructure though? You talked about energy efficiency there, but actual structural energy provision, do you get involved in that?
Yes, I lost you a little bit there at the end, but it was about energy provision, correct?
Correct, yes.
So we're working in the most remote parts of the country here in Pakistan, the areas which are not connected to the electricity grid, specifically on areas that are bordering with Afghanistan. We're providing solar systems in these villages. Many of them are on the very top of mountainsides, and sometimes it takes camels to take the solar systems up there, up to the villages, so that we can install them on school buildings. We're currently working in 1,240 primary and secondary school buildings, putting up solar systems which provide enough electricity, clean, green, renewable energy, to have lights in all the classrooms and fans inside all the classrooms, to make the learning environment far more conducive for the girls and boys, to help them to finish their studies.
that's all good and well for certain people in the community and schools, but with energy prices across the world skyrocketing, I'm sure many people in the developing world, including Pakistan, all they want now is affordable energy today, not fancy renewables tomorrow. How are you dealing with that, the immediate needs of many?
And so this is very interesting in Pakistan at the moment. It's absolutely correct that fuel prices are spiking. But at the same time, the price for solar systems, for solar panels, is decreasing. We can buy a solar panel today for the same amount of money as we bought one 3 years ago. And yet now the solar panels, because of the technology, the improvements in technology, now that same solar panel can light 5 lights in a house, in a rural house, rather than 1 light that the same solar panel could light 3 years ago. So it's keeping track of these changes in the market, speaking with governments, speaking with communities, raising awareness, and increasing the capacity of local people to understand these things and to think about themselves, could there be another solution rather than using their diesel generator?
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for joining us. Today's green agenda, it really suits the rich in any society, and the poor, because they can't afford any of these solutions or access to them, they're the ones that ultimately will suffer. Isn't that the case?
Hi, Jem. Thanks for the interview, and thanks for raising this very relevant aspect. It is somehow true that the future sustainable solutions can be more expensive than the existing ones. But we have to realize that this is something that we have to address now in order to have the benefits offsetting this initial costing. And also we have to consider that there is a private sector, a capital market outside, which is eager and willing to invest in the country, so that we can assure the funding for those apparent at the moment more expensive solutions. But at the end, there will be a benefit for everybody.
You say benefit for everybody, but the benefits needed by people now are absolutely immediate. We live in a society, in a world now where energy prices are soaring, yeah, and people, I'm sure, in Mexico, anywhere in the world, they would rather have affordable energy today than fancy green renewable energy tomorrow. So what are you doing to address that?
Well, this is an arguably a good consideration, a good aspect of that. But of course, there are immediate solutions that we can provide now, and at different levels as well. First of all, awareness of people. They have to understand that they have to reduce the consumption of energies as of today, but also in terms of more concrete actions. Let's suppose about building hospitals. Let's suppose about providing generators for the hospitals, or even solar panel. This is an immediate solution for energy reduction. So we have to face these in different levels. Immediate solutions, but also thinking about long-term visions, providing the governments with the right designs for having a greener buildings or better solutions in the future.
But surely the cost is just astronomical. You're asking of societies, governments to try and achieve something which is it's dreamland. It's never going to be achieved. It's just going to cost too much.
Well, we realize that this is a very costly investment. But first of all, the capitals are not a problem, because a lot of private sector, a lot of financiers are very willing to invest. They have in their agenda, greening the agenda for infrastructure, renewable energies. And as UNOPS, we can support that with the solicitation documents, with the PPP, which is a private-public partnerships initiative. So we can secure funds for the governments, and so to find the solutions for that.
So you're basically relying on the market to sort this out?
Well, this is an overall responsibility, not just for the market, but for the governments as well, because we know that governments have assured also funding, let's say, for subsidies for poor families, so that they can support those families in finding an immediate solutions now. Let's take an example. If we have to install
I'm afraid
a
we've run out of time there, but thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. The challenges of climate change, the costs of dealing with them are going to be absolutely astronomical. Governments can't pay for this, nor can intergovernmental organizations. So UNOPS coming here saying, we need money. Well, it's kind of pointless, really. We can't afford it.
It's true that energy is a critical component for most economies, and therefore this is a real concern. So, I appreciate your question, Jen, but there's no reason to assume that building big fossil fuel facilities like we have in the past is going to get us to the solution any faster. We build renewable energy sources. We can build networked energy solutions just as quickly, possibly with less expense than we have in the past. And we need to focus on the future. The climate change is going to impact everyone, and so we can't afford to get it wrong, to invest poorly in past solutions that aren't resilient to what is going to come in the future. And to give you an idea of one of the projects that we did, we built 98 solar panel facilities across rural Sierra Leone, which were servicing health clinics across the country in these rural areas, which means that they actually had refrigeration for vaccines, they had lights for doing surgeries at night. And that was decentralized energy solutions that were rolled out in a very short period of time, non-fossil fueled solution.
Okay, but surely the issue is right now in terms of costs is that the energy prices are soaring across the world, and many people in the places where you work can't afford what they could afford a few weeks ago. And surely the people, the beneficiaries you often talk about, they would rather have affordable energy today than fancy green renewable energy tomorrow. So how do you square that circle?
That's right, Jem. That is what they would like, and I think that it comes back to what I said before. Actually, when fossil fuel plants or some of these other traditional energy sources are constructed, they are still often unaffordable for the people that actually need them. And being able to construct things that are more at the local level, that rely on basically, solar energy is almost free, except for the equipment that actually captures it. This is actually going to create more affordable solutions in the long run, and actually in the short term as well.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Alexandra from UNOPS, a simple question. Why is UNOPS so expensive?
Many thanks, Jem, for your question. I want to clarify that UNOPS is not expensive. UNOPS, as a UN organization, is a non-profit organization. So the cost of UNOPS in the project only implies the direct cost that require the implementation of the projects. We are not a non-profit organization. But in this line, I want to highlight the added value and all the support that UNOPS bring to our partners in the implementation of the projects. As we have expertise and the mandate of infrastructure and procurement, UNOPS has an structure and procedures, standards, and management methodology that guarantee that the infrastructure projects comply with different criteria that are important for this, like the sustainability criteria, okay? UNOPS implements its project the right infrastructure decisions to ensure a more sustainable, resilient, and inclusive infrastructure and procurement projects.
That's all very, very good that you are involved in sustainability and resilience and not-for-profit. But in terms of what's happening today for people on the ground in Salvador, in Mexico, in Europe, gas prices, energy prices are going skywards. It is so expensive now. Isn't it the case that your beneficiaries would rather have affordable energy today as opposed to green, renewable energy tomorrow? Yeah, there are immediate needs here. Everybody's talking about green agenda and resilience, but actually people have urgent energy needs now. What are you doing about that?
Yes, as UNOPS, as a UN organization explicitly maintaining infrastructure, is committed to supporting climate action. But your question is related with the environment and climate change, and definitely this with the infrastructure. So UNOPS work to help the countries establish a vision for their future infrastructure, okay? UNOPS has procedures, standards, and management methodology to guarantee that the infrastructure comply with sustainable criteria. They range from the designs to the construction works with a perspective on the sustainability of the operation. For example, in El Salvador, we recently have implemented a work of a hospital that has been implemented with these criteria for its design, considered energy saving criteria, such as the inclusion, for example, the solar panels, the technical specifications on the work and the equipment criteria that reduce the excess of the energy. And this is not only has an impact on the environment, but also on the operation costs of the hospital and reducing this cost. Like this, UNOPS at global level has many more projects under these standards. And with this, our partners and the governments are achieving a better value for the money, reducing costs in the operation, and have more with less.
I have one final question, Alexandra. What did you have for breakfast?
Could you repeat the question?
What did you have for breakfast?
Breakfast. I didn't have breakfast because this meeting was too early. So I only drink and drank an orange juice, no more.
Okay, thank you very much for your interview. Thank you. There we go. Right, I'll finish.